This story began on a warm Friday afternoon in a small American town called Brookvale. The sky stretched wide and blue, the air heavy with the smell of freshly cut grass. Kids were pouring out of school, backpacks slung carelessly over their shoulders, laughter skipping across the streets like loose marbles. It was the kind of day that looked harmless, but was about to turn into a lesson in power, privilege, and perception. Elijah Dorsey was 17 years old. Tall, slim, with a sharp jawline that still carried the softness of youth. His skin was deep brown, glowing with the restless energy of someone who believed the world was wide and open for him. He was dressed simply, a navy hoodie, jeans, and sneakers that had seen better days. Elijah wasn't the loudest in school, nor the quietest. He was the kid teachers remembered because of how much potential his essays carried. His friends admired him because he knew how to keep calm when things went wrong. But what no one at school really knew was this: Elijah's father wasn't just any man. His father was Judge Malcolm Dorsey, one of the most respected judges in the state. But Elijah never led with that. He didn't want to. He wanted to be known for himself, not for his father's gavel. That Friday afternoon, Elijah wasn't rushing home. Instead, he stopped by Barton's corner store to grab a bottle of water and a small snack. The store wasn't fancy, just a cramped little shop with buzzing fluorescent lights, its aisles stacked with canned beans, chips, and sodas. Elijah walked in, nodded politely at the cashier, and grabbed a drink. But the problem wasn't what he bought. The problem was what he looked like. Officer Ryan Callahan had been patrolling Brookvale streets for nearly 10 years. At 37, he carried himself with the rigid pride of someone who thought he had the world figured out. He wasn't the worst cop. He wasn't the best. But he was the kind of man who saw people not as individuals but as categories. And when Ryan Callahan saw Elijah step out of Barton's corner store, hoodie pulled over his head, drink in hand, backpack slung low, he didn't see a teenager coming from school. He saw suspicion. He saw someone who, in his mind, could be trouble. His patrol car slowed. His eyes narrowed. And within seconds, his instincts, trained more by bias than reality, took over. Elijah barely made it a block away from the store when the flashing red and blue lights painted the pavement. He turned, confused, as the police cruiser pulled up. "Hey you! Stop right there," Officer Callahan barked, stepping out of the car. Elijah froze. His water bottle slipped slightly in his hand. "Me?" he asked, pointing at himself. "Yeah, you. Hands where I can see him." Elijah's heart started racing. The street around him was quiet now. The laughter of kids had drifted away, leaving him exposed, center stage. He lifted his hands slowly, his backpack sliding off one shoulder. "I didn't do anything," Elijah said carefully. "Don't move," Callahan ordered, approaching with a stiff, heavy walk. His hand hovered near his belt, not on his gun but close enough to send a message. "What's in the bag?" "My school stuff," Elijah replied. His voice trembled slightly. "I just got out of class. You can check if you want." But Callahan wasn't listening. In his mind, this was already a stop with a guilty kid. The hoodie. As Callahan reached Elijah, he yanked the backpack off his shoulder without asking. He unzipped it quickly, tossing notebooks onto the hood of the patrol car. Pages fluttered in the breeze, algebra equations and essay drafts scattering like they didn't matter. Elijah's chest tightened. "Sir, that's my homework." "Quiet," Callahan snapped. He pulled out a pencil case, rifled through it, found nothing. "What else you got?" Elijah lifted the water bottle. "This. You think you're smart?" Callahan said, squinting at him. "You think I don't know what's going on here?" "What's going on?" Elijah asked, baffled. "Don't play games. We've had reports of shoplifting in this area. I didn't steal anything. I paid, asked the cashier." But Callahan didn't care. His hand closed around Elijah's wrist. The grip was tight, firm, unyielding. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Elijah's breath hitched. His chest rose and fell rapidly. "Wait, what are you doing?" "I didn't do anything." A few people across the street slowed down, watching. Phones began to rise discreetly, lenses capturing the moment. "Stop resisting," Callahan barked, forcing Elijah's hands together. "I'm not resisting." "You're hurting me." But his voice cracked, not in defiance but in fear. As the cold metal of handcuffs clicked around Elijah's wrists, the murmurs of the small crowd grew louder. A woman called out, "He's just a kid." Callahan ignored them. His authority was the only thing that mattered in that moment. He started pushing Elijah toward the car. "Get in." Elijah's eyes burned. "Please? I didn't do anything. Call my father. He'll explain." "Yeah, sure," Callahan said with a smirk. "What's he gonna do? Tell me you're some kind of saint." The words hit Elijah differently. He shook his head. "No. He's Judge Dorsey." The air shifted. For the first time, Callahan's hand paused. His grip loosened just slightly. His face twisted as if he hadn't heard correctly. "What did you just say?" "My dad. Judge Malcolm Dorsey." Now the people watching began whispering. Phones stayed raised. This was no longer just a stop, it was a story unraveling in real time. Callahan blinked. He remembered the name. Everyone in law enforcement did. Judge Dorsey wasn't just any judge. He was the judge who'd spoken publicly about racial profiling in Brookvale just last year. The man who'd made headlines by warning officers about bias. And here Callahan was, handcuffing his son on the sidewalk. Callahan's mouth went dry. His instincts told him to let go, to fix this before it spiraled. But his pride told him otherwise. He had already made a show of power. Cameras were watching. His authority, his badge, his reputation, they all demanded he stay in control. So he forced Elijah into the back of the car. But Elijah's eyes, dark, burning, humiliated, met his through the glass. And in that look was something Callahan couldn't shake. Because it wasn't fear anymore. It was a promise. Minutes later at the station, Callahan tried to process Elijah quietly, hoping to keep it under wraps. But word spread faster than he could control. A clerk whispered. A sergeant raised an eyebrow. And then, before Callahan could even finish the paperwork, a tall figure entered the station lobby. Judge Malcolm Dorsey. Broad-shouldered, stern-faced, dressed in a sharp gray suit. His presence filled the room like a storm rolling in. His voice was calm but thunderous when he spoke. "Where is my son?" The station fell silent. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. Callahan felt the weight of every eye on him. "He's in holding," Callahan stammered. Judge Dorsey's gaze sliced through him. "For what charge?" Silence. "You don't have one, do you?" Elijah sat in the holding cell, staring at the floor, shame and anger tangled in his chest. He could hear the muffled voices outside, the clash of authority against authority. His father's voice rising, Callahan's faltering, the tension thick enough to choke. And then footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. The cell door creaked open. Callahan stood there, keys in hand, sweat beading at his temple. His jaw clenched as he looked at Elijah. But behind him, Judge Dorsey appeared, eyes blazing, his voice low but cutting. "This isn't over. Not by a long shot." The air in the station felt electric. Phones buzzed. Rumors churned. And somewhere deep in Brookvale, forces began to stir. Forces that would turn this one arrest into a firestorm. Because Callahan had just made the biggest mistake of his career. And Elijah's life was about to change forever. Some battles are fought in the streets. Others are fought in silence. And then there are those battles fought under bright fluorescent lights, where power collides with pride, and the whole world watches. This battle began the moment Judge Malcolm Dorsey walked into that precinct. The station lobby was still. Officers shuffled papers they weren't reading, avoided glances they couldn't hold. It wasn't every day a judge stormed in demanding answers. Judge Dorsey stood like an unshakable pillar, his voice cold but sharp. "You have my son in custody without cause. Unlock that cell. Now." Officer Ryan Callahan straightened his shoulders, forcing confidence into a body trembling under pressure. "With all due respect, Your Honor, I was doing my job." The young man matched the description of a stop. Judge Dorsey's voice cut like a gavel striking wood. "Do not insult me with excuses. You detained my son because of the color of his skin, because of a hoodie, because you thought authority gave you license to humiliate him." Murmurs rose in the room. A few officers shifted uncomfortably. Callahan's jaw tightened. "With respect, Judge, I don't need to explain my instincts to you," Callahan shot back. But the words only made the silence heavier. Inside the holding cell, Elijah sat on the cold bench, his knees bouncing nervously. The metallic echo of the bars made every sound sharper. The jingle of keys, the slam of a door, the rise of his father's voice outside. He pressed his forehead against the wall. He'd heard about things like this, seen videos online. But nothing compared to living it, to feeling his wrists rubbed raw by cuffs that never should have been there. He thought about his classmates, kids who never had to wonder if walking home would end like this. He thought about his father, the man everyone respected, reduced now to begging for his release. And worst of all, he thought about himself, sitting there powerless. Elijah whispered under his breath, "This isn't fair. This isn't fair." What Callahan didn't know was that by now, the video of Elijah's arrest had already hit social media. The bystanders who filmed it wasted no time uploading. Within the hour, comments poured in, hashtags spread, and a crowd began forming outside the station. Chants echoed through the evening air. "Let him go. Let him go." News vans pulled up, reporters adjusting their microphones. Flashing cameras lit up the precinct like lightning. Brookvale had just found its storm. Judge Dorsey stepped closer to Callahan, lowering his voice so only he could hear. "You've humiliated my son, my family, and yourself. Release him immediately, and maybe this ends quietly." Callahan's pride flared. He could feel the eyes of his fellow officers on him, the crowd outside, the cameras that could twist him into a villain in seconds. His badge felt heavier than ever. "If I back down now," Callahan muttered, "I lose everything." "You already have," Judge Dorsey replied. Their eyes locked, one man clinging to pride, the other to justice. The door to the cell swung open. Callahan stood with the keys in hand, his face a mask of anger and shame. Judge Dorsey stood just behind him, arms folded, eyes burning. Callahan unlocked the cuffs with a snap. "You're free to go." Elijah rubbed his wrists, the marks red against his dark skin. He looked at Callahan, then at his father. His voice trembled, but it carried a strength he didn't know he had. "This is what you call protecting and serving?" he asked Callahan directly. The room froze. Even officers at their desks stopped pretending to work. Callahan's jaw flexed, but no words came. Elijah stepped out, his shoulders straight despite the weight he carried. The moment Elijah and his father stepped outside, the crowd erupted. Cheers, chants, shouts filled the air. Reporters surged forward. Cameras flashed like fireworks. "Judge Dorsey, what happened inside? Is your son pressing charges? Elijah, do you feel targeted because you're black?" Elijah squinted against the lights. His chest tightened. He wanted to vanish, to melt into the ground. But his father's hand rested on his shoulder, steadying him. Judge Dorsey raised his hand to quiet the crowd. "My son was unlawfully detained. This is not just about him. This is about every young black man who has been treated as guilty before being proven innocent. And I will not let this go unanswered." The crowd roared in approval. Callahan, watching from the doorway, felt the ground beneath him start to crumble. That night the story was everywhere. News channels replayed the video of Elijah's arrest, each frame dissected, each word of the judge analyzed. Talk shows debated. Social media exploded. Some people called Callahan reckless. Others defended him, claiming he was just doing his job. The town was split down the middle, the air heavy with tension. Inside his home, Elijah sat at the kitchen table, his untouched dinner in front of him. His mother, Rachel Dorsey, sat beside him, holding his hand. Judge Dorsey stood across from them, pacing. "This isn't over," Malcolm said. "Callahan will answer for this. The department will answer for this." But Elijah shook his head. "Dad, I don't want to be the face of this. I just want to live normal. Go to school. Be me." Malcolm stopped pacing. His eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. "Sometimes, son, life doesn't let you choose when you become part of something bigger." Meanwhile, at the station, Callahan sat alone in his office. The lights were dim, his desk littered with reports he couldn't focus on. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number lit the screen. You let him go. That was your first mistake. Don't make another. Callahan's stomach dropped. He looked around, paranoia creeping into his chest. Whoever sent that message knew. Knew about Elijah. Knew about the power shift. Knew he was slipping. His pride wasn't the only thing at risk anymore. His safety was. The Dorsey family settled in for the night. The house was quiet, the world outside loud. Elijah sat at his window, staring at the flashing lights of reporters still camped on the street. He whispered to himself, almost a prayer, almost a warning. Please, don't let this get worse. But downstairs, Judge Dorsey's phone buzzed. He picked it up, expecting another reporter. Instead, his face darkened as he read the message. Your son may have walked free today. But tomorrow he won't be so lucky. His grip tightened on the phone. His heart pounded. And in that instant, Judge Dorsey realized, this wasn't just about Elijah anymore. It was about something much bigger. And it had just begun. Some storms arrive with thunder. Others creep in quietly, like shadows that stretch longer with every passing hour. And for the Dorsey family, the storm was only just beginning. The morning sun peeked through the Dorsey household blinds, but the warmth did little to ease the chill that lingered from the night before. Elijah sat at the kitchen table, chin in his hands, staring at the half-eaten cereal in front of him. Rachel Dorsey, his mother, moved around the kitchen quietly, the clinking of dishes filling the silence. She glanced at her son's bowed head and then at her husband, who sat across the table, already in his suit, already prepared for another day of battles. Malcolm Dorsey looked at Elijah with stern eyes softened by concern. You're not going to school today, he said. Elijah's head snapped up. What? Dad, I have exams. No, Malcolm said firmly. Not after last night's message. Rachel froze. Elijah's eyes darted between his parents. What message? Rachel's gaze landed on Malcolm, her voice sharp with fear. You didn't tell him? Malcolm sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. He deserves to know. He pulled out his phone, sliding it across the table. Elijah picked it up, reading the words. Your son may have walked free today. But tomorrow he won't be so lucky. The phone shook slightly in Elijah's hand. His chest tightened and his voice cracked. Someone wants to hurt me? Rachel moved quickly, wrapping her arms around him. No one is going to hurt you, she whispered, though her trembling voice betrayed her fear. Malcolm's jaw clenched. I won't allow it. Across town, Officer Ryan Callahan sat in his small kitchen, a cup of coffee cooling untouched. His uniform lay across the chair, but he hadn't put it on yet. His wife, Lena, stood by the sink, arms folded, watching him. The whole town's talking, Ryan. You made the news. Again. Ryan rubbed his temples. I did my job. You handcuffed a judge's son in front of a crowd. That's not just doing your job, Lena shot back. And now, people are saying you're a racist, a disgrace. Do you have any idea what this means for us? Ryan's phone buzzed on the counter. He picked it up and froze. Another message from the same unknown number. Fix your mistake, or we'll fix it for you. His face went pale. Lena stepped closer. Ryan, what is that? He shoved the phone into his pocket. Nothing. But inside his stomach churned. Whoever was behind those messages, they weren't threatening just Elijah. They were threatening him too. By midday, reporters swarmed outside the courthouse, their cameras trained on Judge Dorsey as he walked up the steps. Elijah wasn't with him. Rachel had insisted he stay home. Microphones stretched toward Malcolm like eager hands. Judge Dorsey, do you believe your son was targeted because of his race? Are you pressing charges against Officer Callahan? Will this case influence your position on the bench? Malcolm stopped, adjusting his tie. His voice was calm but carried the weight of a man who had stood in courtrooms his entire life. This is not just about my son, he declared. This is about justice. About how many young black men are treated as suspects before they are seen as students, sons, or simply people. I will not be silent. The crowd erupted. But behind the cameras, two men in dark suits watched quietly, whispering to each other. One of them pulled out his phone and sent a message. Back at home, Elijah sat in his room, headphones on, music blasting, trying to drown out the world. But the words on his father's phone kept flashing in his mind. He won't be so lucky. He looked at his reflection in the mirror, eyes tired, shoulders tense. I didn't ask for this, he muttered. His phone buzzed. A message from his best friend Jordan Mills. Bro, I saw the video. You good? Want me to come over? Elijah hesitated. He wanted normal. He wanted his friend. But he also knew things weren't safe. He typed back. Not today. Things are crazy. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that the walls of his own home were closing in. Late that afternoon, a knock rattled the Dorsey front door. Rachel peeked through the curtains and gasped. It's him, she whispered. Elijah's stomach dropped. He hurried to the hallway just as his father opened the door. Ryan Callahan stood there, hat in hand, uniform crisp but his face weary. Judge Dorsey, he began, voice low. We need to talk. Elijah's fists clenched at his sides. Why are you here? Callahan glanced at him briefly, guilt flickering across his face. Because I need you both to know something. That message you got? I got one too. Someone's trying to play us against each other. Malcolm narrowed his eyes. Why should I believe anything you say? Because, Callahan said, pulling out his phone, they're watching both of us. And if we don't figure out who's behind this, your son and my family are in danger. The living room grew heavy with tension. Rachel stood protectively near Elijah. Malcolm stayed upright, his presence commanding but wary. You expect me to believe you're suddenly on our side? Malcolm asked. I'm saying I didn't send that threat, Callahan replied. I may have handled the situation wrong, but I don't target kids. Someone else does. Someone who gains from us tearing each other apart. Elijah spoke up, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside. So who is it? Who's watching us? Callahan shook his head. I don't know. Not yet. But I think it's bigger than just one person. Malcolm studied him closely. His instincts screamed not to trust this man. But the phone in his pocket buzzed again, and when he pulled it out, the message made his blood run cold. You and the officer can't hide. We're closer than you think. Malcolm showed the message to Callahan. The officer's face drained of color. Elijah leaned closer, reading over his father's shoulder. Then, another buzz. Elijah's own phone lit up. A message. He picked it up slowly, his hands trembling. Rachel's breath caught as she looked at the screen over his shoulder. The message wasn't words this time. It was a picture. A picture of Elijah, taken through his bedroom window. His body froze. His heart thundered. His voice was barely a whisper. They're watching me, right now. The room fell into stunned silence. Callahan's head jerked toward the window. Malcolm's face darkened like a storm. Rachel pulled Elijah close. Outside, the street looked quiet. Too quiet. And somewhere, someone was watching. Some dangers are loud and reckless. Others are quiet, careful, and patient. And sometimes the quiet ones are the most terrifying of all. The Dorsey home was silent, except for the sound of Elijah's shaky breathing. He held his phone like it was burning his hand, staring at the photo of himself through his bedroom window. Rachel gripped his shoulders, pulling him close. Her voice trembled. They're outside. Right now. Malcolm. Judge Dorsey's face was stone. He closed the blinds in one swift motion, locking the window with a snap. His voice, low but firm, filled the room. No one goes near the windows. No one leaves this house tonight. Officer Callahan stood by the door, eyes scanning the shadows outside. His hand hovered near his radio, but he hesitated. He wasn't sure who to call. Not when he didn't know who he could trust. Malcolm turned to Callahan. His words were sharp, each one a blade. You brought this into my son's life. Callahan shook his head. Judge, I swear, this isn't me. Whoever's behind this, they want you to believe it's me. But I'm in danger too. Rachel's eyes narrowed. And we're supposed to trust you? After what you did? Callahan met Elijah's eyes for a brief moment. Guilt flashed across his face. I made a mistake. A big one. But this is different. Whoever these people are, they're watching all of us. Malcolm's jaw tightened. He hated the thought of working with the man who humiliated his son. But the picture on Elijah's phone left no room for pride. Something darker was at play. The night deepened. The street outside looked quiet, almost peaceful. But from the far corner, hidden behind a parked car, a camera lens glinted faintly. A man in a dark hood leaned against the car, phone in hand. He sent another message. "You can lock the doors. We're already inside your world." Then he faded back into the shadows, unseen. Upstairs in his room, Elijah sat on his bed, knees pulled up to his chest. His world felt like it was collapsing. First the arrest, then the threats, and now someone watching him through his own window. He whispered into the dark. "Why me? Why us?" His phone buzzed again. A new message. This one just 2 words. "Come outside." Elijah's chest tightened. His hands shook as he dropped the phone. He wanted to scream, to run, to wake his parents, but fear froze him in place. Downstairs, Malcolm and Callahan sat across from each other at the dining table. Neither man spoke at first. The silence was thick, filled with history, anger, and now, unwanted necessity. Finally, Malcolm broke it. "If this is some game you're playing—" "It's not," Callahan interrupted. His voice was raw, stripped of the arrogance he carried before. "I got the same message, the same photo. Someone wants me and your family at each other's throats. And the worst part? I think it's someone with access. Someone close to the department." Rachel gasped softly. "You mean, another officer?" Callahan nodded slowly. "Or more than one." Elijah crept downstairs, his phone clutched tightly in his hand. His face was pale, his voice barely steady. "They told me to come outside." Rachel rushed to him, grabbing the phone. Her breath caught as she read the message. Malcolm's fists clenched, his knuckles white. "No one is going outside," Malcolm said firmly. But Elijah shook his head. "If I don't, they won't stop. They'll just keep coming closer. They'll never leave us alone." His eyes were full of something new, not just fear but defiance. He was tired of hiding. The family moved cautiously toward the living room window. Malcolm parted the blinds just a crack. The street was still. Too still. But then, across the road, a figure stood beneath a flickering streetlight. Tall, motionless, face hidden in the shadows. Rachel gasped. Elijah's stomach dropped. Callahan's hand hovered near his radio. The figure lifted a phone, its screen glowing in the dark. A message buzzed onto Elijah's phone instantly. "Time's up." The porch light flickered. The house phone rang, sharp and shrill, cutting through the silence. Malcolm grabbed it, his voice hard. "Who is this?" A distorted voice crackled on the line. "You think the world will protect you because you're a judge. You think your son is untouchable. But we're closer than you realize." The line went dead. Then a crash. The sound of glass shattering upstairs. Rachel screamed. Elijah spun around, heart hammering. Callahan drew in a sharp breath, already moving toward the stairs. Malcolm's voice thundered through the house. "They're inside. Some dangers knock at the door. Others crawl through the cracks, unseen until it's too late." For the Dorsey family, the danger had just crossed the threshold. The crash echoed through the house like a gunshot. Rachel clutched Elijah's arm, her scream breaking the fragile calm. Malcolm's face hardened, his judge's composure giving way to something primal, a father's fury. "They're inside," he repeated, voice deep and commanding. Officer Callahan's instincts kicked in. He darted toward the staircase, hand hovering near his belt, not for a weapon but for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Callahan. Possible break-in at Judge Dorsey's residence. Request immediate backup." But the radio only hissed with static. No response. Malcolm grabbed a heavy lamp from the side table, gripping it like a weapon. Rachel ushered Elijah into the corner of the room, her arms wrapped tightly around him. "Stay low, don't move," she whispered. Footsteps creaked upstairs. Slow. Deliberate. Whoever was in the house wasn't rushing. They wanted the family to hear them, to feel their presence. Callahan glanced back at Malcolm, voice low. "We need to clear the upstairs." Malcolm's jaw clenched. "Wait. After what you did to my son, you think I'll trust you in my house?" Callahan met his eyes with grim sincerity. Right now, Judge, you don't have to trust me. You just have to survive. In the corner, Elijah trembled. He looked at his mother, then at the stairs. His voice cracked as he whispered, "This is my fault." Rachel cupped his face firmly. "No. Don't you ever say that. You didn't cause this. Their hate did." But Elijah couldn't shake it. He felt like a magnet pulling chaos into his family's life. First the arrest, then the threats, and now, someone inside their home. Malcolm and Callahan crept up the stairs, the old wood groaning beneath their feet. The hallway stretched long and dark, lit only by the faint glow of Elijah's nightlight at the far end. A shadow shifted. A figure moved. "Who's there?" Malcolm demanded, lamp raised. Silence. Then, a whisper low and mocking. "Time's up." The figure darted into Elijah's room. They rushed in, but the room was empty. The window stood wide open, the curtains fluttering in the cool night breeze. On the bed, Elijah's notebooks were scattered, pages torn as if someone had rifled through them. Callahan swore under his breath. "They're playing with us." Malcolm picked up one of the notebooks. A single page had been torn out. His hands trembled as he flipped through, realizing the missing page was Elijah's essay draft for school. An essay about injustice and the weight of being a young black man in America. "Why would they take this?" Malcolm muttered. Callahan's face darkened. "Because they want to send a message." Back downstairs, Rachel held Elijah close. Suddenly the phone rang again. The same shrill tone cutting through the fear. She grabbed it, her hands shaking. "Hello?" A distorted voice answered. "You can't protect him. Not in your house. Not in your town. He belongs to us now." Rachel's heart stopped. "What do you want from my son?" But the line went dead. Callahan and Malcolm rushed back downstairs, their faces pale. Elijah looked up, fear and anger warring in his eyes. "They're not just after me," he said. "They want to break us. All of us." Callahan nodded grimly. "And they're watching every move we make." Malcolm slammed his fist onto the table. "Then let them watch. Tomorrow I'll take this public. I'll expose them all." But Callahan shook his head quickly. "No. If you go public now, they'll strike harder. These people aren't afraid of headlines. They're afraid of silence breaking in the wrong place." Rachel's voice wavered. "So what do we do?" Callahan's eyes flicked toward Elijah. "We keep him safe. At any cost." The room fell into a tense silence. Then, a loud thud against the front door. Everyone froze. Another thud. Then another. Heavy, deliberate blows shaking the frame. Elijah's eyes widened. "They're trying to get in." Rachel pulled him tighter. Malcolm gripped the lamp with both hands. Callahan stepped toward the door cautiously. Then an envelope slid under the door. Thick, yellowed, marked with a single word in black ink. Judgment. Malcolm bent down slowly, picking it up. His hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a photo. A photo of Elijah, sleeping in his bed, taken just last night. The family stared in horror. Callahan's face drained of color. And before anyone could speak, every light in the house flickered, then went out. The Dorseys were plunged into darkness. Some battles are fought in the open. Others unfold in the dark. But the greatest battles? They happen inside the human heart, where fear and courage collide. The Dorsey home was swallowed in pitch black. Rachel's panicked whisper filled the silence. "Malcolm, where are you?" "I'm here," his deep voice replied from the dark. Elijah clutched his mother tightly, his heartbeat thundering in his chest. He had never felt so small, so watched. Then from outside the window, a faint glow. Headlights. A van idled across the street, its engine humming low like a predator waiting for its prey. Malcolm still held the envelope marked Judgment. The photo inside haunted him, his son asleep, taken while they thought he was safe. His voice was tight, controlled only by sheer will. "They want me to believe I've already lost. But I will not let them take my son." Officer Callahan's flashlight clicked on, a narrow beam cutting through the dark. His face was drawn, pale but resolute. "This isn't random," he said. "This is organized. They're sending a message to you, Judge Dorsey. And to me. Malcolm turned to him sharply. Then you know who's behind this. Callahan hesitated, then nodded. I think I do. And if I'm right, they're people I swore an oath to work beside. Rachel's voice cracked. You mean, police? Callahan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Elijah's phone buzzed again. A new message. Come outside, Elijah. Or we come in for you. Tears welled in his eyes as he handed the phone to his father. Dad, I can't. I don't want them to hurt you. Or Mom. Malcolm pulled him close, his booming voice steady but soft in his son's ear. You will not face them alone. Not while I breathe. 3 sharp knocks rattled the front door. Slow. Intentional. Callahan raised the flashlight beam toward the door. If we open that, we play right into their hands. Malcolm's eyes narrowed. And if we don't, they'll break their way in. Rachel's grip tightened on Elijah. Her voice broke. Malcolm, please. Think about Elijah. But Elijah suddenly straightened, his fear hardening into something else. He stepped forward, surprising them all. I'm tired of hiding, he said, his voice trembling but defiant. They've already seen me scared. I won't give them that anymore. Malcolm swung open the door, Callahan by his side, flashlight beam cutting across the porch. Standing there was a figure in a dark hood. Broad shoulders. Hands gloved. The hooded man didn't move. He simply dropped another envelope at their feet and turned to walk toward the waiting van. Malcolm shouted after him, Who are you? Why target my son? The figure paused, half-turned, his voice low but chilling. Because he's yours. Then he slipped into the van, which sped off into the night. Malcolm tore open the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a document, a court transcript from one of his old cases. A case where he'd ruled against a powerful network of corrupt officers and businessmen. Callahan's face darkened as he skimmed it. This isn't about Elijah. This is about you, Judge. They're using your son to punish you. Rachel gasped. But, why involve Ryan? Callahan's jaw clenched. Because I was on that case too. Testified against one of my own. I thought it was over. But they've been waiting. Watching. Malcolm's eyes burned with fury. Cowards. They hide in shadows, threatening children because they're too afraid to face justice. The family gathered together in the living room. Elijah stood between his parents, his hands balled into fists. They think I'm weak, he said, voice stronger now. They think I'm just a kid they can scare. But I'm not. I'm your son. And I won't let them win. Rachel's tears glistened, but her pride shone through. That's my boy. Callahan looked at Malcolm. We can't fight this alone. They've burrowed too deep into the system. If we expose them, we'll need allies. People who aren't afraid to stand with us. Malcolm nodded slowly. Then we take this beyond the courts. We take it to the people. Suddenly, the power flickered back on. Every light in the house blazed. The television snapped to life on its own. Static. Then an image. Not a channel. Not the news. A live video feed. It showed the Dorsey family, inside their own living room. The camera angle was from above. Hidden. Watching. Rachel screamed. Elijah's knees buckled. Malcolm's fury erupted. They've planted cameras in our home. And the family was left in silence, knowing the war wasn't over. It had only just begun. If you'd like us to bring you a continuation of this story, drop a comment and hit the subscribe button. Tell us where you comment from.